Hi, everybody. This is Dan Cerrucci, and I'm here with Joe Condo, and this is going to be a fascinating chat. We are live on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And this will also be on my blog at dancerrucci.com. I just want to, if everyone would bear with me, I just want to check and make sure we are, in fact, on at least one of these social platforms and that we're being picked up live. And there we are. We're on Facebook. So I don't think there's any need to check the others. Joe, how are you this morning?
Dan, I am well, thank you. I'm looking forward to Christmas, and things could not be better for me right
Oh,
now.
as we say, Buon Natal.
Buon Natale.
Absolutely. And this is going to be a fun conversation that happens to be morning while we're taping this, but you may be watching it at any time. And whenever you're watching it, I hope you enjoy it because we're going to be talking about a lot of things. But we're going to talk a lot about politics, and we're going to talk about New Jersey politics and South Jersey politics. And I have to begin by saying that Joe Condo, who I've known, well, let's just say for quite a while, right, Joe?
Well, we'll leave it at that, Dan. over 30 years, I'm sure.
Hey, you know what? 30 years in my way of thinking, that's almost like yesterday. Okay.
Truth be told, it feels like yesterday, indeed.
It does feel like yesterday, Joe. And we have to begin by saying, and this, like to put it into historical context, Joe was, I think, the very last Republican Camden County freeholder, our commissioner, as it's called now, county commissioner in Camden County. Is that right, Joe?
That is correct. Bob Kennedy, my running mate, and I were the last two freeholders, and I have the distinction of being the last Republican freeholder director in Camden County history. And as far as I know, I might be the only living Republican freeholder director from Camden County.
You very well may. And of course, when you held that position, Joe, what were you, about 12, 13 years old?
A little bit older than that. I know I look good for my age, but yeah, that was a little over 30 years ago. I was 26 when I got elected. I was 27 when I became director. So former Republican County Chairman George Geist used to remark that I was the youngest Republican freeholder director in the state of New Jersey. I'm not sure. There might be a little fact checking necessary there, but yeah, I was 27 years old when I was the freeholder director, Camden County.
That is just amazing that you were, I mean, that would be young, considered young now, but at that time, I think it was even more amazing. I see, oh, by the way, I see some of our friends are watching. Gina Passarella just tuned in, and my dear friend Karen Connor, and we're so glad to have them watching. They're watching this on LinkedIn. But Joe, how did you get elected to office at such a relatively young age? I mean, and at that time, I got to say, because I was around then, of course, I have been around forever, but I got to say at that time, like the average age of elected officials in Camden County, New Jersey, whatever, was, I would say was probably in late 40s, early 50s age.
That is somewhat true, Dan, but I showed up at just the right time for the age change, if you will, because even among the Democrats, that was when Rob Andrews had been elected to the freeholder board. He's not that much older than I am.
Right.
And so the time was ripe. I mean, our party leaders, Michael DePiro, of course, my mentor, Richard Wooster, Michael Bristow, the folks that preceded me were certainly of an older generation. I was happy to have been nominated for the seat in the year that I was. If we go back to that time frame, we're talking, I ran for freeholder in 1990, and we may all remember that then Governor Florio, the late Governor Florio, and a tragic passing of a great man, even if we were on opposite sides of the aisle. So I definitely want to shout out Governor Florio. But at that time, 1990, there was the great Florio backlash because when he was elected in 1989, and then there were tax increases. It was just a wonderful time.
Oh yeah, that triggered a statewide tax revolt.
Absolutely right. So we capitalized on that. So when you ask
Hmm.
how was I able to get elected, we recognized that Governor Florio, the people are most offended when someone close to them betrays them. Right? There is no greater betrayal than when someone close to you betrays you. And
Absolutely.
so he was our congressman. He was the leader of the Camden County Democratic Party, de facto, and basically the leader of everything in South Jersey Democrat politics, and consequently the de facto governor of South Jersey, if you will.
That's
Uh,
right.
and then when he went to Trenton, became the actual governor and launched a I'll never forget it, a $2.8 billion tax increase to cover a $600,000 deficit, or 600 in those days. That was, was big money.
Right.
$2.8 billion was big money back then.
Right. Right. And
Apparently,
as I recall, Joe, he even wanted to put a tax on toilet paper.
toilet
And
paper.
that seemed to be like that was like the final straw. Like that sent people crazy. The
We
toilet paper
made
tax.
buttons. We literally had folks helping us. We had an army of volunteers in those days, and we literally had folks making buttons for us that would show a roll of toilet paper, and that was all
Right.
we needed to put on the button, and just vote Republican, and it went very well. So I learned a lot in those days. I mean, you wonder how did I get into politics so young? Might even be the first. I mean, I was hatched into Republican politics, and I'm delighted to actually hear you mention Gina Passarella. She's also an old dear friend of mine, and she's from Waterford Township, where I don't know if she wants me to shout that out, but too late now, where my family was from. And so my family, and I know her father was always a big supporter of mine. Republican politics in Waterford Township, even to today in Camden County, is Waterford's the only Republican town left in Camden County, I think. So I was
Here you
hatched
are.
into
And
Republican
my
politics.
wife was a teacher in Waterford.
Is that right? I didn't know
She was a
that.
teacher in Waterford, and she worked under Richard Salamina was her superintendent. Do you remember Richard Salamina?
Richard and Doreen Salamina, remember them very well. In fact, yes, exactly. I
Okay.
haven't been in touch with them. I haven't been in touch with much of the old crowd
Well, I
recently.
should tell you that I could see their condo from practically from where I'm sitting right now. They now live here in Cherry Hill in one
Uh-huh.
of the, it's actually an apartment that's in the same complex that I'm in.
Well, if you run into them, you will please do me the favor of extending my best wishes to both
I
of them.
will.
I would
I will.
appreciate that. Thank you.
So you were a Camden County resident through and through. Now I got
Right.
to ask you, Joe, when you were elected to the, because I know you made a career shift during your life. When you were elected to the freeholder board or commissioner board, were you a lawyer at that time?
No, I was not. I actually, believe it or not, am a physicist by education. And one of the highest compliments anybody can pay me is when I tell them I'm a physicist. They say, "Yeah, sure you are." So I try not to portray that physicist image, but I am in fact a physicist by education, and I spent the first 12 years of my professional career in systems engineering in what was once RCA in Camden. It went through a couple of gyrations. While I was there, I used to say I worked for 4 different companies and never had to move my desk. Because I was in Camden, and then I was a freeholder from 91 through 93 inclusive. And then I went to Rutgers Camden Law School in 94. A lot of people used to chide me after 5 years of Camden County politics. Becoming a lawyer was like going straight. So I went to law school. And because I have a background in physics, it was just a nice fit. I ended up becoming a patent lawyer. One must have a technical background to be a patent lawyer. So my real profession has nothing to do with politics. Politics is some guys golf, some guys fish. I play politics. That's my hobby.
And so you worked at RCA, you were a physicist. I have to ask you, did you work like on top secret stuff, like on stuff that if you had told us about it, you would have to kill us?
The mere question begs its own answer, Dan. I worked on government communications systems.
Oh, uh-huh.
So that was,
Okay.
yes, that's the thing. Um,
And
Systems, yeah, we deployed systems all over the United States and all over the world. And in those days, I used to joke, not it's not even a joke. It's actually the fact that I was on the internet long before the internet became publicly available. So,
Well,
as we all know, Al Gore did not, in fact, invent the internet. It was it was developed. It was developed by the Department of Defense, and so
so I mean, so you were aware of the internet and you were familiar with it before any of us were using it.
right. We used to have the so-called Internet Protocol address if you wanted to talk from one computer to another. Now you type in Dan Cerrucci's name and the message gets to Dan Cerrucci, because all of that is now, underground. But it was really pretty cool at that age. I mean, I was in my 20s, so it was really pretty
Mhm.
cool at that age to be exposed to something. And then yet I didn't have my own personal email account until I left there, which was 1997, February 1997. I just got my first email account. So I've been working on the internet for years, but didn't have an email account until 10 years later.
Well, that was
So,
pretty early, though,
yeah, yeah.
considering. And of course, you had this wonderful mentor. I guess he was your mentor, Michael DePiro. Tell us about him.
Michael DePiro absolutely was my mentor, and unfortunately, taken way too young. Michael passed away at age 49 from liver cancer. I think at the time 49 seemed so old. At this point in my life, 49 is barely, you barely, your teeth are barely grown in yet. And so it was tragic. It is, of course, how I became the freeholder director, but that's a different topic. But Michael saw something in Camden County politics that no one else saw. And to this day, I believe that. And to this day, I continue to preach the message according to Michael DePiro. Michael first ran, he was a councilman in Merchantville in Camden County, and he first ran for freeholder in 1984. He was unsuccessful, but then ran again in 1985 with Richard Wooster and Michael Bristow. And they won that election in 1985. And it was the first time the Republicans had won in Camden County since Watergate. So it was a big deal that they won that election. And at that point, I was just coming into the scene. I had just graduated from college, had just started to get into the party in 84 and 85, but got to know Michael very well, got to know his style very well, and got to know the campaign strategies that he employed, which ultimately led to my electoral success in 1990. And it's real easy for everybody to say, oh, that was the Florio backlash of 1990. But there were a few counties in South Jersey that Republicans didn't win. We won Camden County. And I attribute that entirely to, well, there were a lot of things that you could attribute that to. There's never any one thing. But Michael DePiro's campaign strategy was just completely different. It was unorthodox, and I still employ it today. He was definitely the leader of George Geist was our chairman. Michael DePiro was our leader in many ways, and just George's team and Michael's team would come together, and that was it. There was no stopping us in those days.
Didn't you tell me that Michael DePiro said that politics was basically about three things, or you had to have three things to win the election?
You are correct. Michael's basic strategy was all political campaigns, and this is very common, all political campaigns involve three things: issues, organization, and money. But Michael would add to that best 2 out of 3 wins. And in Camden County, the Democrats will always have the money. The Republicans will always have the issues. The battleground is over organization. And what Michael was an expert, a master at, was building an organization. We built an organization all throughout Camden County. And I don't want to discount George Geist's role in that, because George Geist was also a master organization builder. So between George Geist and Michael DePiro building an organization all throughout Camden County, and more importantly, deploying that organization, literally a ground game, right? Classic political strategy is money and mailers, money and mailers, money and mailers. We're going to raise money. We're going to send out mailers, money and mailers. Michael taught us how to build a ground effort. And we had a ground campaign. So what I now refer to, this money and mailers, I refer to as the aerial assault. Michael taught us how to build a ground crew. He taught us how to get down into the ground and how to get out to very specifically targeted voters and get them to vote. Because I mean, I'd like that, and I work very closely these days with Senator Michael Testa down in Cumberland County.
Right.
Senator Testa has been just phenomenal in embracing this same kind of strategy. And you can see the results showing in Cumberland County, where Senator Testa is able to raise a tremendous amount of money. Michael's also the chairman in Cumberland County. So as chairman, he raises a great deal of money, more than most minority chairmen, more than probably any minority chairman in the state. And now come January, Chairman Senator Testa will be a majority chairman in Cumberland County, employing the same sorts of strategies that Michael DePiro taught us to employ back in the mid '80s. I just wish our party would adopt them more broadly.
He pulled off Mike Testa, who is a friend of both of ours, of course, pulled off a dramatic upset. And you were talking about the upsets and the victories that Republicans have had in what I call South Jersey.
Yes.
Which is below Camden County down to the shore. Tell us about some of the victories they've had there, and also some recent victories in Burlington County.
Right. So I'll talk mostly about the Deep South because that's where I play these days. I mean, of course, we've described the fact that I'm from Camden County, but I've spent most of my adult life in Burlington County, and now have recently moved, now that my children are all grown and out of the house, moved to the deep pine woods of Atlantic County. And I happen to be in Senator Testa's first legislative district. So that's where Michael and I met back in 2019 in his race. And though we love to talk about these races as upsets, I'd like to put a sort of a different gloss on what's happening down here, I think, because I don't see upsets in the classic sense. I see, first of all, there's a demographic realignment of the parties in the post-Trump era. I would love to write about that sometime. I just don't have the time. But certainly that has happened, which explains a little bit about what's going on in Burlington County, a little bit of what's going on in Gloucester County, and a lot about what's going on in the Bayshore communities. But the question is, what do we attribute the upsets or the change of party down here? And I think the reason that I push back on the term upset is because I like to think about a lot of the minority counties where the Republicans are in the minority. The leadership and the organizations have been able to get us into the red zone, if you'll allow that metaphor, but just not quite over into the end zone. The Republican Party has traditionally done much better in South Jersey than the registration edge would indicate. We're still out registered significantly. I mean, even in Burlington County, which was heavily Republican for 40 or 50 years, the Democrats typically outnumbered the Republicans. And so when you look at the results of the elections and you find that the Republicans are losing by very small margins compared to the voter registration edge, you realize that they're in the red zone. We just have to push them into the end zone. And so a lot of what's happening now is we are starting to build those organizations down here. I go back again to my Camden County roots and Michael DePiro. We're starting to build those organizations down here throughout South Jersey that are able to just push the ball across the goal line into the end zone. And I work so closely with Chairman Senator Testa. I just use that as the example. Since 2019, when he's been chairman probably since 2014, but it really peaked in 2019, where he then had this organization behind him where everybody expected he was going to, he had to win Cape May County by more than he lost Cumberland County. Of course, it's the classic strategy in that district, but he carried Cumberland County because he was building an organization in 2019. So what appeared to be an upset was a groundswell finally delivering its vote. Because that organization's there.
Flip the first.
And that's how we flipped the first in 2019. And that he has continued to build that organization throughout Cumberland County, in the cities of Vineland and Millville in particular, because they're obviously the huge portion of Cumberland County. The Bayshore communities deliver huge Republican pluralities. And now Chairman Testa has an organization around him, people that are supportive of him, supportive of the party. Commissioner Doug Albrecht was the first Republican commissioner to be reelected in Cumberland County in who knows how long. And this is the first time the Republicans will have multiple year control in Cumberland County. The Republicans are in control now for 2 years in Cumberland County. They have picked up a seat here and there. I think the Republicans will be in control in Cumberland County forever. And so now if you look at the map, Cape May is solidly red. Salem County is 5-0 Republican, I believe, for the first time in an awfully long time. It's a Republican county, but now it's 5-0 Republican. Cumberland County, Republican. Atlantic County, solidly Republican. Our new leadership there, Don Purdy, is picked up as chairman. Senator Palestina and Assemblyman Guardian and Assemblywoman Swift elected in LD2. Senator Stanfield took out the turncoat Dawn Adiego in LD8. And
that was a particularly sweet victory, I have to say, Joe. Those three there in that district, especially the senatorial, was particularly sweet.
It was particularly sweet. I mean, I've known Dawn Adiego since my earliest days in politics. It was hurtful to see her change parties. One can only speculate as to why, and I'm not about to do that here. But the fact that after all of those years and all the support that she got from the Republican Party, that she would turn to the Democrats just because they were in majority, it was a sweet victory to see Senator Stanfield elected. And I'm thrilled to be able to say that there was at the time, now with redistricting, it's gone, but at the time there were 3 Camden County towns in that district. And Assemblyman Teresi, knocked me on the side of the head and said, you got to help deliver these 3 towns, which we did. One, of course, was Waterford. Waterford keeps coming up. I think Waterford Township, Camden County, is the center of South Jersey geographically and geopolitically, if you ask me. So another shout out.
And we had our friend Brandon Umba elected there, too.
Yes,
Assemblyman Umba, who is just a really exciting young talent for the Republicans, don't you think?
Absolutely love Brandon Umba. I think he's going to have a great future in the party. Brandon was the township administrator in my hometown in Lumberton. When I lived in Burlington County for 20 some years, I lived in Lumberton Township, and Brandon was the township administrator in Lumberton, where I lived. And so I was thrilled to hear that he was running for the assembly. I think Brandon is a great guy. He's going to do a fine job in the assembly, and I think he's got a bright future ahead of him in the Republican Party for sure.
And then, of course, we would be remiss if we did not mention Joe the trucker. Okay, our newest, what we call the, I guess you would call him.
I would call him.
He was.
I would call him Senator Edward Durr, because that's right. What he is.
I referred to him as Joe the trucker. I should have said Ed the trucker.
Ed the trucker.
But he's a regular Joe too. He's a regular guy. Senator Ed Durr.
He is a regular guy. That's for certain. I got to know Senator Durr at one of the earliest fundraisers in his campaign in 2021, and he is absolutely, he's one of us. And it was so delightful. He worked so hard, and he had no money, as everybody knows. And his running mates, Assemblywoman Sawyer and Assemblywoman McCarthy Patrick, are great. I just love to see the 3 of them. And we talk about an upset. I will be perfectly candid in my confession. Senator Durr kept telling me all through the campaign, I'm going to win, I'm going to win, I'm going to win. And I'm like, Ed, don't get your hopes up. And I got yelled at by I don't know how many people for demoralizing the candidate. And I said, I'm not demoralizing.
You were trying to be realistic.
Trying to be, just trying to be realistic. And
he had a dream, and he was. I rarely have I seen a harder working candidate who just by his own sheer force of will and by his knocking on doors and his absolute persistence, he dethroned the president of the Senate.
Right.
Okay.
Then Senate candidate Ed Durr also embraced the ground game model, and it showed that it paid off for him. Again, people want to say Senator Sweeney was asleep at the switch or this or that. I don't believe that Senator Sweeney did or didn't do anything to adversely affect his own campaign. He did what any of us would do. He had a huge fundraising advantage. The polls indicated that he was way ahead, and so there was no reason for them to invest a whole lot of time and money and effort in LD3 when they had other legislative districts like LD8, for example, that we just discussed, that were real battlegrounds. It made an awful lot of sense from a strategic perspective. what I don't think anybody anticipated was, I keep coming back to the groundswell. This is where I have I have to give my old friend George Norcross credit. He referred to it not as he's not a red wave, it was a tsunami. And people often mistake the term tsunami for tidal wave, like it was a big wave. No, what it means is it came out of nowhere. And that was, because he's obviously a political genius, he got it right. This upswell in 2021 came out of nowhere because I think there was a ground game in place that nobody knew about, because the ground crew's quiet. See, the mailers, you see the mailers come out, you see the television commercials come out, you see the social media ads come out, but you don't see the ground game. That's quiet. And then on election day, all of a sudden, you're like, where did these votes come?
Right. So in this case of Ed Durr, which this made national and even international news.
Yes.
And just phenomenal. We have to say that of the three, of course, he didn't have the money, but he had the organization and he had the issues.
That's right.
Okay, so there we go back to Michael DePiero's three.
Yep.
And we can, by the way, we can see that in all these situations, in each of the situations, each of these big Republican victories in South Jersey that we've mentioned, we can measure them according to the three. Now, in the case of Senator Tester, who's built a remarkable organization, okay, has the issues, still has the issues, and now is coming to a point where that organization has the money as well, because they've settled in now. But here's the thing that I like about Mike Testa, in addition to the fact that he's one of the most charismatic rising politicos that I know. And, in my business of public relations, that C factor, that charisma factor is very important.
That's
and
right.
He is megawatt. Okay, I put him in the megawatt category in terms of his sheer presence and appeal. But also, he's doggedly works at keeping that organization together and keeping it focused. I know you were at the recent breakfast, their Christmas breakfast.
Well, how do you know that?
I saw pictures up from it, Joe, on your social media. You were all over the place, Joe.
I try so hard to hide. But yes, that's 100% right. Focus is a great word. Michael Testa is a megawatt. He has megawatt level charisma. There's no question about that. Michael has been willing to embrace conservative values, and one of his favorite sayings that I hope he doesn't mind that I throw out there, that you can't beat vanilla with French vanilla. And we Republicans in New Jersey have long tried to be slightly different from the Democrats, but have always feared being too different from the Democrats. And Michael has embraced conservative values, has articulated them in a very intelligent way. People believe in the message. People believe in him. The organization is focused. He's a hyper-focused individual. And I think the organization that he has built is just focused right behind him. I see nothing but good things for Senator Testa. I see nothing but good things for the Cumberland County Republican organization. Probably when you and I get together 30 years from now and have this conversation.
I pray. From your lips to God's ears.
We'll see. It'll be a totally different conversation, right?
I don't want to speculate about it too much.
I'm with you there.
But now we also have so many young up and coming leaders in the Republican Party in South Jersey. I want to mention our dear friend, Councilman Jesse O'Leary Kurtz from Atlantic City, who is, I guess he's the only Republican on the Atlantic City City Council.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And who also has a wonderful organization that his people hit the ground and knock on the doors, and they also serve the community. They know their community and they serve their community.
Right.
Uh,
I think the world of Jesse Kurtz, and you're right. The councilman has an organization around himself and around Atlantic City, and you hit the nail on the head. Again, there's another example where in Atlantic City, the Republicans will never have the money, but they will have the issues. And Councilman Kurtz has an organization that really supports him and follows him, and as you say, does good for the community, even beyond his role. I mean, as a minority voice on the Atlantic City Council, he probably doesn't get a whole lot of stuff through the remaining, the Democrats on the council, but that doesn't stop him and his organization from doing good for the community and certainly for the ward that he represents in the city as a whole.
and we have so many energetic young Republicans down there in I again what I call South Jersey, like our friend Brian Fitzherbert, who's involved with the Young Republican organization, and who I see as having a bright future in the party as well.
Yeah, I haven't spoken with Brian in some time now, but I believe he's still the head of the Atlantic County Young Republicans, and I have to say it seems to be one of the most vibrant, perhaps the only really vibrant Young Republicans organization in South Jersey. I would strongly encourage all the party leaders in South Jersey to, and yes, South Jersey begins at Burlington and Ocean and down. Anything north of that is North Jersey, of course. But I would encourage all of the leaders in the South Jersey counties. One of the things that to really start to establish viable Young Republicans organizations, one little data point that I will give you, because I think that this is often missed when I see the analyses, is that, excuse me, is that I'm watching voter registrations among 20 somethings, new voter registrations, 18, 19, 20, up to 25. In this part of the world, there are more Republicans than Democrats registering at that age.
Mm-hmm.
We hear how the young vote is going to the Democrats. We hear how the college vote is going to the Democrats. Yeah. In college towns, that might be true. But in more conservative areas like South Jersey, definitely breaking toward the Republican Party, which is a good sign for the future of our party. But here's where the but comes in. We have to bring them into the party. I was brought into the, well, I was hatched into the party, but we have to bring youth into the party. There's a great future there. A very good friend of mine, and I'll shout her out, Estelle Manor City Councilwoman Christine Masker, says if you go into a church and you don't hear children making noise and babies crying, you have to be wondering where this church is going to be in 20 years. I feel the same way about our party. We have to embrace youth. You mentioned earlier how much younger I was than the conventional politician when I got involved. And then the party's been stuck with me for 40 years because of that. But that's what we want to do. We want to bring people in colleges. We want to be able to go to colleges and be, as Claire Gustafson, our former candidate for 1st District congressional seat against Don Norcross, always unapologetically Republican. I think we need to be unapologetically Republican. Does our party have some warts? Of course it does. Are there things that we need to self-police? Yes, we should, because if we don't, the Democrats certainly will do it for us. But we need to stand, as we mentioned Senator Testa earlier, we need to have the courage to move beyond French vanilla and offer a genuine alternative to the Democrats' liberalism. And we've seen it time and again. When we do that, we win elections, because this is where I tie them together, and then I'll shut up. We are then able to energize this entire body of people that gets overlooked. People who want to see Republicans win, but don't necessarily want to be members of the party. They don't want to have county committee seats. They don't want to have to go to meetings. They don't want to go to have fundraisers, but they want to see the party win. So they're willing to get out into the streets and help us win. They just don't want to be members.
And once the party wins, they want to see them do the right things, and they want to see them remain close to the community. And they don't want to have a situation where after the party wins and after they elect these people, they never see them again. And this is one thing that Republican office holders tell me again and again. The way to win and to stay in office is to keep close to the community, listen to their concerns, respond to their concerns, and follow through on them. You need to have really, really good constituent services and so forth and so on. And yes, as Ronald Reagan said, and this is similar to what Senator Testa preaches, we've got to paint in bold colors. We can't be, we can't be beige to the other party's white. We have to paint in bold colors. But Joe, uh, people say to me, it must be lonely being a Republican in New Jersey. And I say, well, not in South Jersey.
Well, beyond South Jersey, I mean, you saw my reaction. I'm not sure how this past election was painted as a fail for the Republican Party. I am so tired of being the party of Eeyore. Oh, well, we didn't do as well as we thought we were going to do. We flipped a congressional seat, one of the few in the country,
in New Jersey,
in New Jersey, that helped enable us to take control of the House of Representatives. And we flipped the county. Do you know how hard and rare it is to flip a county? We flipped the congressional seat, and we flipped the county. I don't know how many municipal offices we flipped. I don't know how many county seats we flipped. I don't know how many school board seats we flipped. And yet we've let the Democrats again take control of the narrative. And red wave crashed on the beach. No, we did very well in 2021.
I think part of the problem, Joe, was that expectations for the Republicans were so high. That's that expectation game that we know very, very well. Again, in public relations, you got to be careful about expectations so that the expectations were set way up here. And I think the media participated in it. They wanted to, so that even if the Republicans fell a little bit short, they could say they lost. See? And that was part of it, definitely.
The media definitely spins. So there's a couple things going on, right? Set the expectations so high. That's Democrat misinformation to try to get Democrat base riled up to come out and vote to prevent a so-called red wave and to create complacency among Republican voters. That's a tried and true ancient strategy, right? The misinformation campaign. But more than that, you look at the language, right? You've been in public relations and journalism your entire career, right? So you look at the language. The Democrats had, I think, a 7-seat majority in the House of Representatives for the past couple of years, and they had a clear majority. The Republicans now have a 7-seat majority in the House of Representatives, and it's a narrow, thin majority. Like, we just flipped the House of Representatives, folks. Now, did we do as well in the Senate as we had hoped? No, but that also makes me crazy, because when you look at the states that were up this year, who's surprised that Nevada, Laxalt, came close and did probably as good a job as anybody could do? But who's surprised that Nevada stayed Democrat? Who's surprised in this day and age that Arizona stayed Democrat? Of course, Kristen Sinema might be telegraphing some other things to come. But who was Pennsylvania race? I could go on about the Pennsylvania race forever. We take up the rest of the program. But yeah, Pennsylvania might have been a what you call it, a toss-up state, but it never really was. And to suggest
that was the defining seat. Flipping that seat for the Democrats was the defining factor that now gave them, well, we don't know about Sinema, what's going to happen, but gave them, the 51 votes that they were looking for. Yeah. I honestly cannot rationally explain the election of Fetterman. I don't think there's a rational explanation for it. I do think that the early voting and the mail-in voting, he overwhelmingly won that. Mm-hmm. And so that going into election day, this is something that Republicans really, really have to address, is this obsession with voting on election day, which we've got to get over, and we've got to master early voting and mail-in voting. But going into election day, he had already amassed such a huge margin that it was near impossible to overcome. And he knew that. And even by the time of the debate, which, as you recall, the one debate they had was held very late, and his performance was disastrous an absolute disaster by any measurement whatsoever. Um, he he knew that it wasn't going to matter. It wasn't going to matter that much. And he had a slogan, every vote, every county. And he had an organization in every single county. There you go, Joe. That's what you were talking about.
You just finally touched on the actual magic, because and I'll tell you where I push back strongly. I mean, our party is trying to find itself when it comes to early voting and vote by mail. We all know the Democrats have mastered the vote by mail. Their constituency is comfortable voting by mail. In fact, I will dare say they prefer to vote by mail. Our constituency wants to go to the polls. So this fixation on trying to beat the Democrats in the vote by mail campaign, I submit, is misplaced. Our objective has to be to get our constituency to vote on election day. That's when they want to vote. That's when our constituency wants to vote. And if John Fetterman had a better organization on the ground than Mehmet Oz, then he also was able to get his vote out on election day in a way that the Oz camp was not. So to localize it back to New Jersey, continuing to build local organizations in every, and I will say this about my own campaign strategic techniques, I eliminate municipal boundaries. Every election jurisdiction, whether it's a municipality, a county, a legislative district, a congressional district, the entire state of New Jersey, is a compilation of election precincts. Now, I learned this from watching the governor in Florida, the next president of the United States.
Ron DeSantis, yes.
Ron DeSantis. And recognizing which pockets in Florida were heavily Republican areas and making sure you get the vote out in those areas. You could be in a large municipality, metropolis, and it has 57 election precincts. 30 of them are heavily Republican and the others are not. You want to focus your efforts in the heavily Republican precincts. Doesn't matter what municipality they're in, wherever your legislative district, whatever your congressional district, whatever your county, focus on those election precincts, and that's where your organization comes into play. Put your organization to work in the election precincts that are the most valuable. To wit, let's get away from this idea that you must live in the district that you work, or you must work in the district where you live. You send the troops to where the battle is, right? If I live in Estelle Manor City, we're 75% Republican. We don't need a really, really big ground game here to get out 75% the Republican vote. But maybe we need to move our folks from Estelle Manor City, where we don't have to work so hard, to somewhere else where they could use a little extra effort. Let's start to get Republicans all over South Jersey to recognize that this year, here's the battle. This is where we need the organizational support. We do it with money. We move money all over the place. Let's start to move people. Let's start to move the organization all over the place. Let's get all of South Jersey cooperating and identifying where we need to put our ground troops every election.
I think it's you're going right to the heart of political organization, Joe, and something that really has remained pretty constant over the years. Joe, I know you're right there in the Pine Barrens. You love the forest and you love the Jersey Pine Barrens. You're native New Jerseyan, but this is a great passion for you.
100%. And if the sun weren't shining in the back window behind me and creating glare on my screen, you would see the forest right behind me outside my dining room window. I moved to Estelle Manor City a couple of years ago. I just learned this past weekend, did not know this. Estelle Manor City is the second largest city, not municipality, but the second largest city by land area in the entire state of New Jersey, eclipsed only by Vineland City, right, where I find myself often. But I just learned that. And so, yes.
That's amazing. I didn't know that. I knew Vineland was the largest by area, but I didn't know. I had never heard of Estelle Manor City, quite frankly.
I will tell you, when I moved down here, two things happened. People would ask me where I live, and I would say Estelle Manor, and they would say, where? And I would say, exactly. That's why I moved here. As my brother Michael describes it, it's in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by nothing. And it is. It's almost 60 square miles. It's almost entirely forested. And I think there are about 800 homes in the entire 60 square miles. It's also
Wow.
one of the lowest densely populated cities in the state. So I do love the woods. As I said earlier, my family is from Waterford Township, not from the Atco section, but actually from Waterford Works, which is another place. You think of Waterford Works, people think of Ireland, but it's actually the Waterford Works section of the township. And my family's farm, my grandfather's farm, which is still inhabited by descendants of my grandfather, all my cousins and cousins, once removed, twice removed, three times removed, backs right up to Wharton State Forest. So
Wow.
even though I was raised in Barrington, which of course is a bedroom community, I spent a great deal of time on Condo Avenue in Waterford in the woods. I used to hunt out there. I hunt out here now. And I love this section of New Jersey. It's southwestern Atlantic County. Proximity to the beaches, Ocean City, Cape May, Avalon, Atlantic City, proximate to the nightlife in Atlantic City, right by the expressway, right by the Garden State Parkway, right by the Atlantic City International Airport, golf courses, hunting, fishing, canoeing, everything that you want. I don't recommend it for skiing, cross country skiing maybe, but it's really pretty flat and just
It's
about. I mean,
very flat.
you stick
You,
your finger in the ground and you hit the water table, so it's very flat. But cross country skiing maybe, but I don't recommend it for alpine skiing. But other than that, there is pretty much anything that you want. Snowmobiling for sure. Uh, it's just a wonderful part of New Jersey. And because I work in Philadelphia, my office, of course, is in Philadelphia. Many of my colleagues are Philadelphians or otherwise from the Philadelphia suburbs, and do not appreciate, because of course to them New Jersey is the Atlantic City Expressway. Do not appreciate that 2/3 of the southern half of the state is the Pine Barrens, and it's a huge, huge portion of our state, and it really is it's a wonderful place to live. And I'm not going anywhere, which is why I remain committed to trying to make South Jersey the best place we can possibly make it.
absolutely. And I know you've been so involved. I don't know where you find the time to be at all these events and stay involved. And this has been a lifelong pursuit of yours. And now you're in the point where you can mentor so many of these people that are coming up. And that must give you a great joy, great satisfaction.
I I will be sentimental for a moment.
Yeah.
When Michael DePiro passed away, and a part of his eulogy, his aide gave the eulogy. I won't mention the name because I'm not sure he would want me to, but one of the lines in the eulogy was, "You are not really dead as long as you are remembered." And if I can pass on to another generation what Michael DePiro passed on to me, that would be the delight to pass on, because I believe very strongly in this following principle. We are stewards during our time here. For example, did not form the Republican Party. We who are members of the Republican Party inherited a Republican Party that was formed an awfully long time ago and developed by many, many souls that came before us. And we are now the stewards of the party, and we have to pass the party on in better shape than we received it. And so is true for our government, for our republic, for our families, for our religions, for our cultures. We have inherited these from our ancestors, and we need to pass them on. And so, to get out of the little sentimental quagmire, if I can pass on to another generation of Republican operatives what Michael DePiro passed on to me 30 years ago, that would be of great joy to me. Absolutely.
I think you've said it. And that's a little that's a little chance, just a tiny little chance for a snip of immortality, if you will. But even more important than that, as you expressed, it's making things better and passing on something that's better than you found it.
Right.
And that's a wonderful code to live by. And Joe, I know I'm going to say, I hope that people come away from this thinking that, you know, well, gee, you can be involved in politics and be a nice guy. You don't have to be an SOB.
Well, that's true, and it's actually that's actually a great topic to discuss because we I have of course worked with and fought against many Democrats in the 40 years that I've been involved in politics, and I will say that there are very few that I would say are really nasty people, and I don't like them. But I can say that about the Republican Party too. I've come across a few people that I think are really nasty and I don't like them. And people that have nothing to do with politics, there are always those people. But for the
Right.
most part, I have found, regardless of your political views, regardless of your race, religion, creed, or any other demographic you want to attach to somebody, your wealth, your education, most people are good people. Most people are good people. We go through life cynically and we believe everybody's out to get us. But most people are good people. Most people want to do the right thing. Most people are honest. Most people are genuine. And so I enjoy working in a business that really is about people. We work with people, but everything that we do in government is designed in theory to make life better for the people we represent. And in a shout out to my friends on the other side of the aisle, as long as they believe in what they're doing and we believe in what we're doing, and here's the tough part these days, we respect each other's points of view. Right, that's the tough part. That's a recent development. But as long as we respect each other's points of view, we can learn from one another. And we really, I would love to see us actually get back to a time where we could find middle ground. But again, I have to shout out my good friend Senator Testa. Senator Testa always says, if the left just keeps pulling farther and farther to the left, where's the middle these days? So we have become so polarized. Obviously, now stating the obvious, we've become so polarized we're not able to have even healthy discussions among nice, genuine, honest, well-meaning people, and
Right.
that's a problem.
That
That's a big
and it
problem.
is. And we hope that we can leave this message with people as two citizens who've been involved in politics for a long time. And I don't think either one of us have tried to burn any bridges. We both have friends on the other side. In our case, I'm sure both of us have lifelong friends on the other side of the
Indeed.
aisle that we've remained friendly with, and we hold in mutual respect, even though we have had some very heated disagreements and exchanges. We hold them in mutual respect. And I think this is something that we have to teach young people so they come up with this. And this is so important to the future of our democracy, Joe. So we leave on that note. It's been a wonderful conversation. We're almost coming up on 55 minutes now. I can't believe it.
Dan, you and I could talk politics all day. So
There you are.
right. Well, thank you so much for having me with you today. As you said at the beginning, we've known each other an awfully long time, and I have watched, followed you very closely, and you do remarkable work. You do wonderful work, and so it was so nice to have an opportunity to be here today, and would love to chat with you just anytime.
Well, the feeling is mutual. And once again, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you and your family, Joe.
Same to you, Dan. Best wishes for a healthy and happy new year. So let's plan to do what we need to do so we're still here talking 30 years from now.
I look forward to it. And in the meantime, I'll see you on the campaign trail.
You absolutely will. Dan, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.